Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Wimbledon in southwest London to Earlsfield. This ride takes just 15 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, there are fast and frequent trains between these two places, so there isn't really a time advantage from cycling, but it's still a competitive and pleasant way to make the trip. If you find this video useful or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, then you can find a link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Queen's Road, just round the back of the shopping centre, and we're going to turn around and head into South Park Road. South Park Road is closed to motor vehicles at the end that we entered it from, so it's reasonably quiet and there isn't too much traffic on it. If you ever need to make a trip east from Wimbledon town centre, then this is the street that I would generally use. It runs parallel to the Broadway and to Kingston Road, so it's a nice direct way of avoiding heavy traffic. It also connects nicely at its far end to the Wandle Trail, which is a completely traffic-free river path which we're going to use later in the video, and which is also just a really nice place to go for a leisure ride. South Park Road is by no means perfect. As you can see, there are still quite a few cars using it. It's quite a long street, so even though there isn't much use for through traffic on it, it does tend to see a few vehicles down here. It's also quite narrow due to the double parking on both sides of the road. This means that if you do run into any cars, especially bigger ones, it can be a bit of a pain to get past them sometimes, especially if they're driving in the middle of the street. Multiple cars at the same time can also cause snarl-ups as they struggle to get past each other as well. Because of that, I do think it would make sense for the London Borough of Merton, which controls the streets around here, to have a look at maybe introducing a few more modal filters or closures on the streets around here to really make sure that no one is using this street as a cut through, as it's definitely not suitable for heavy traffic. Merton isn't amazing when it comes to cycling, but it is far from the worst outer London borough, and I believe that the council is actually working on a long-term strategic cycling strategy for its roads, so if they're doing that, they should probably take a look at this one and see how it can be improved. Note that we were able to use the parallel zebra crossing there to safely get across Hayden's Road. Do just make sure that you're careful when you use it though, as not all motorists stop for cyclists crossing it. It is nice to have priority there though, and one really low-hanging fruit obvious change that could be made would be to introduce crossings like that on the other intersections that you have to negotiate along South Park Road. It's nice to see that Garfield Road, which we're on now, has a school street, which hopefully should mean that there isn't so much traffic down here during peak hours, where pick up and drop off can cause a lot of vehicle movements and can really interfere with cycling at peak times. It also makes it safer for kids to get to school and improves the air quality outside of schools, which is also really important, although not necessarily directly relevant to this video. As you've probably noticed, we've now left the streets and we've headed onto these paths which we've accessed via Garfield Park. These paths are obviously shared with pedestrians, so do just make sure that you ride sensibly on them and you're courteous to any people on foot who you run into. The Wandle Trail is generally a really nice place to ride a bike. The paths are never too narrow and there is good street lighting throughout if you find yourself here after sunset, which you may do if you're using this as a commuter route. Of course, it isn't on a main road and it is away from things like shops, businesses, homes, so it can sometimes feel a little bit isolated, so do take that into account if you're the sort of person who doesn't enjoy riding in places where there are potentially fewer people around, especially after dark. It's tricky to know what to recommend for improvements to the Wandle Trail, because I think a lot of people do value it as a leisure route and a nice place to come and walk a dog, ride a bike with kids, or to cycle just to, get away from things. But some of those things that make it really nice as a leisure space might make it not so good as a commuter route, especially for people who don't enjoy riding in places that are a bit more isolated. That said, it's the best that we've got at the moment, and it isn't too bad if you don't mind those caveats. For example, there is a reasonably decent shared pedestrian and cycle crossing here over Plough Lane, which gets you across the other side of a busy road with relatively minimal fuss. Ideally, in the long term, I think it would be nice to have protected cycle lanes on Hayden's Road and the A218, which would give people a more direct route which didn't involve going through a forested area that's a little bit isolated. But in the meantime, this is definitely the route that I recommend. And to be fair, at most commuter times, there are actually people using it to get to work as well. So I don't think it's likely that you'll usually be completely alone down here. I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts about what they think about riding on paths like this as opposed to on the main road. Do let me know in the comments. Do you think it's pleasant and just nicer than riding on the road? Or does it sometimes maybe put you off using a route after dark? I know that people have different opinions about this, but I'm never sure of the balance of opinions, so it would be good to hear from viewers on that. One improvement that could definitely be made, I think though, is not so much to do with this route, but to do with what happens downstream. And the reason this video ends in Earlsfield, that's because when you get to Earlsfield, there isn't actually a way to connect to the upper part of the Wandle Trail, which heads right into Wandsworth, without going on the main road. If such a connection was built, I think it would require a small section of path and maybe a bridge. It would make this route really, really useful and create a direct link from Wimbledon into Wandsworth and actually other parts of South London as well. I do think that there was some plan for this that was included in a development around Earlsfield, but it doesn't seem to have happened. So if anybody has information as to what's happened with that, then do let me know, as I'm always interested in new developments and things because it helps me plan future routes. Of course, just your regular reminder that if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do just hit the subscribe button so that you're alerted to future videos, especially if I do one on a future extension of the Wandle Trail. By the way, just so you know, there are some really interesting signboards on the right there explaining the flora and fauna that you might run into on this route, and if you're a nature lover, it's probably worth a stop and a read, especially if you're not in a hurry. Now we've come off the main Wandle path here and we've cut down Summerley Street, which is generally nice and quiet due to that half-point closure which we saw at the beginning of the street, which had a nice flower bed on it. It's a nice way to brighten up the street a little bit, I think, but it also keeps it nice and quiet. And it takes us straight to Garrett Lane, right near Earlsfield railway station, which is just at that bridge ahead. And this is where I'm going to end the video for the reasons that I've just discussed, as there isn't currently a safe route or a pleasant and safe route to continue without going on the main roads. I have actually seen plans by Wandsworth Council, which controls the streets around Earlsfield, for a new modal filter which would connect to some new cycle tracks on Burntwood Lane, which should actually extend this route a bit more. So when that's built, I'm definitely going to check it out and do a video showing that off. I think it could actually be pretty significant and help you get towards Wandsworth Common, but we'll see what the quality of it is when it's built, as I think Wandsworth might have watered down the scheme and I'm not sure where they've got to with that. Hopefully that should be coming in the next few months when they get building. In the meantime though, thanks so much for watching, and do let me know in the comments what you think of paths like that and routes which go down isolated paths. I know that there are differing opinions about it, and I'm interested in hearing both sides of the debate. Do hit subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks so much to everyone on the Patreon who helps keep this channel going. See you guys again next week. Thank you so much, and goodbye.